The deepest cuts come not from knives, but from blood. My name is Adam Whitmore, and I'm 42 years old. For over a decade, I trusted my older brother with everything: my ideas, my finances, my loyalty. We built a tech startup together in our 20s, and by our 30s, it became a mid-sized empire worth over $40 million. He was the business mind, I was the innovation. We balanced each other, or so I thought. Looking back now, there were signs. Tiny betrayals masked as business decisions. Smirks he gave in board meetings when I disagreed with him. The way he always wanted final say. But I was too loyal, too blind, too naive. Until one morning I walked into the office and my access card didn't work. I remember standing there in the lobby, swiping it 3 times before the security guard approached me with a nervous look on his face. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm really sorry, but we've been instructed not to let you in." I laughed, thinking it was some technical error. "Instructed by who?" "I'm the co-founder." He swallowed. "Your brother said you've been removed from the board, effective today." I felt my stomach turn cold. What? That was just the beginning. 3 months earlier, I should have known something was coming when I started noticing discrepancies in our company's financial reports. Little things, transactions that didn't match, expenses I didn't approve. When I brought it up, my brother Nathan brushed me off. "Don't worry about that, Adam. Just let the accountants do their job. You're the ideas guy, remember?" I let it go, like I always did. I trusted him. Then came the private investor meetings I wasn't invited to. His increasing closeness with our CFO, a guy named Blake, who never liked me. They started changing things, quietly, legally. Then they made me sign a temporary restructure agreement while I was recovering from pneumonia. I didn't even read the fine print. That was my fatal mistake. I trusted my brother. And one day I walked into a meeting room and saw my name removed from the company's founding documents. Legally, they had full control, and I had nothing. No shares, no position, no access. But worse than that, they kept my patents, my software, my designs, everything I built. I confronted Nathan. I stood in his glass office, heart pounding, voice shaking. "You stabbed me in the back." He didn't even flinch. "No, Adam, I did what you couldn't. I took us to the next level. You were always the weight holding me back. I made this company, and you made code. I made a business. And you think that gives you the right to destroy me?" He leaned back, cold and smug. "You destroyed yourself the moment you trusted someone who was always smarter than you." Those words stayed with me, burned into my mind. I walked out of that building with nothing but my keys and the weight of betrayal crushing my chest. He ruined me. But he forgot one thing. I built the core software, the infrastructure that ran everything. And I had something he didn't expect: a backup drive. Hidden, coded, locked. Everything he stole, I had a blueprint. And now I had nothing to lose. I didn't sleep that night. The betrayal ran too deep, cutting through every layer of trust I had ever built. I kept hearing their voices in my head, my wife's laugh, the smugness in Jason's tone. Every minute that passed felt like I was drowning in silence, in rage and disbelief. By morning, my eyes were red from staring at the ceiling. The house, once warm with memories, now felt like a stranger's home. I left before sunrise and didn't even glance at Lisa sleeping beside me. That woman wasn't my wife anymore. I drove aimlessly, trying to gather my thoughts. I needed answers. I needed to understand how long it had been going on. But most of all, I needed a plan. Hours passed. The city was alive, people rushing to work, unaware of the implosion that had happened in mine. I parked by a quiet cafe I used to visit years ago. I ordered black coffee and stared out the window. And then, as if the universe wanted to punish me more, Jason called. I let it ring, but then he texted, "Let's talk, you deserve that much." I replied, "Fine, 1 hour, my place. Don't be late." I drove back, my stomach in knots. I wasn't ready to see him, but I needed to. I had to look him in the eye and see if there was even a hint of guilt. He arrived 5 minutes early. Hey, he said softly, standing in the doorway, hands in his pockets like a teenager caught stealing. I didn't say anything. I stepped aside. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same one where he'd eaten with us for years. I'm sorry, man, he started. I never meant for this to happen. You never meant? I echoed. You never meant to sleep with my wife behind my back? He looked down. It just happened. We were close, and she... Don't you dare blame her alone, I snapped. She didn't force you. You're my best friend. You were like a brother. I know, he said, and that's what kills me. I laughed bitterly. It kills you? There was silence. He looked me in the eye then. I didn't come here to justify it. I needed to face you. And I wanted you to know it's over. We ended it. Oh, how noble. He swallowed hard. It's done. I'll leave the company. You built it. You deserve to keep it. That caught me off guard. You'll leave? I said cautiously. He nodded. Sell my shares to you for whatever price you think is fair. I leaned back, studying him. Why? Guilty conscience? Maybe, he said. Or maybe I realized I became someone I never wanted to be. There was truth in his eyes, but I didn't trust it. Not fully. You've got 30 days, I said, and then I never want to see your face again. He nodded. As he left, I felt empty. Not better, not relieved, just hollow. But something about his offer nagged at me. Jason never gave up power easily. The fact that he'd surrender his shares without a fight? No, something was off. I hired a private investigator that afternoon. Discreet, efficient. I gave him everything, texts, emails, financial statements. A week passed, then 2. When the investigator called, his tone was serious. You might want to sit down. He said, I'm good. Talk. Your friend Jason. He's been embezzling from the company for over a year. My blood ran cold. How much? Close to $500,000. Hidden through dummy vendors and offshore accounts. I couldn't breathe. There's more, he added. Lisa was helping him. Some of the transfers were in her name. They hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. They robbed me blind. Suddenly, Jason's offer to sell his shares made sense. He was trying to get out before the walls came crashing down. Lisa wasn't just complicit, she was his partner in crime. And I'd been sleeping next to her every night. My hands trembled, but not from pain anymore. From clarity, this wasn't just a betrayal, this was war. The weekend trip was Lisa's idea of heaven, a secluded cabin in the mountains, firewood stacked, a hot tub bubbling on the porch, and no cell signal for miles. For me, it was a stage. One last performance before the curtain dropped. Do you remember the last time we were out here? She asked on the drive up, brushing her fingers along my arm. I did. It was 2 years ago, before everything shattered. Before I knew she was sleeping with my best friend and plotting to gut the company I'd spent 15 years building. Yeah, I said, offering a soft smile. That weekend was perfect. She leaned her head on my shoulder as I drove. I kept my hands steady on the wheel. My mind was already somewhere else calculating, remembering every step in the plan. I had 3 goals. Get her to talk. Get her to confess. Get it on record. The night we arrived, I played the perfect husband. I cooked her favorite dinner, lemon garlic salmon with couscous and asparagus. We drank red wine by the fire, and I let her talk. She was relaxed, warm, trusting. I've missed this, she whispered later, as we lay under a blanket near the crackling hearth. Us. I didn't respond right away. I just let the moment hang. Then I whispered back, I want us to be honest with each other again. She turned to me. I do too. I leaned in. Then start with this. Why did you do it? She blinked. What do you mean? You and Jason. I kept my voice calm, like I was asking about the weather. She sat up. What? You don't have to lie. I know. I've known for weeks. She stared at me, frozen. I just want the truth, Lisa, I said softly. I deserve that much. Her face twisted pain, shame, panic, all flickering in seconds. I didn't mean for it to happen, she murmured. It was stupid. I thought you didn't love me anymore. I worked 80 hours a week trying to keep us afloat, I said, my voice tightening. And your solution to that was to sleep with my business partner? She covered her face. It wasn't just about the sex. I was angry, lonely, and he was there. Was he there? I asked. When he talked you into stealing from me too? Her eyes snapped up. What? I know everything, Lisa. The fake invoices, the shell accounts, the money transfers, the emails. I have it all. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I leaned in. You don't need to lie anymore. You're alone now. Jason's already gone. She paled. Gone where? I shrugged. I told him I'd sue, or he could sign over his shares and vanish. He chose to vanish. Silence. I placed a small recording device on the table between us. She stared at it, horrified. You're insane, she hissed. No, I said calmly. Just done playing the fool. She stood up. You can't record me, and this isn't admissible. I looked at her coolly. It's not about court. Not yet. It's about truth, and I'll get it. One way or another. She ran to the bedroom, slammed the door. I didn't follow. The next morning, she was cold, mechanical. She barely looked at me during breakfast. I'll take a cab back, she said. Suit yourself. By Monday, she was gone from the house. She moved into her sister's condo across town. I moved fast. My lawyer filed for divorce with full evidence. I initiated criminal proceedings. My private investigator compiled the final report. Everything was airtight. The only thing left was Jason. I had a plan for him, too. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. Jason's lawyer. He was contesting the agreement, refused to transfer his shares, claimed I had coerced him, said I was emotionally unstable and creating a toxic workplace. Of course, Jason was never going to leave peacefully. He wanted war. So I gave him one. I called a board meeting, presented all the evidence, every forged signature, every shell company. The board was stunned. I played them the audio clips. Jason and Lisa laughing about the dumb old man who barely sees what's under his nose. It was brutal, but effective. The board voted 5-0 to suspend Jason immediately and begin an audit. He sent me a text later that night. You smug bastard. You think you've won? I replied, No, I know I have. But the war wasn't over. Jason fought back. He started leaking fake stories to the media claiming I had embezzled money and blamed him to cover it. He painted me as bitter, paranoid, abusive. The public turned fast. Investors got spooked. Employees started asking questions. I had to make a choice. Clear my name publicly or disappear quietly and protect the company. I chose the latter. I sold the business to a trusted partner, quietly, privately, and I stepped down. But before I left, I did one last thing. I sent every piece of evidence to the IRS, the FBI, the State Financial Crimes Unit. And I attached Jason and Lisa's names. With one final note, this is justice. Do with it what you will. 3 months later, Jason was arrested at the airport trying to fly to Costa Rica with a fake passport and $30,000 in cash. Lisa was indicted 2 weeks after that for wire fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction. I didn't attend the trials. I didn't need to. The universe had already handled them for me. But justice isn't peace. Peace took time. I moved into a small apartment by the water. I started consulting slowly, quietly. I stopped checking social media, stopped reading the news. And one night, sitting on the balcony, the wind cold against my skin, I felt something unfamiliar. Freedom. They'd taken everything from me. And I was still here. Still standing. But this was just the midpoint. There's more you don't know yet. I sat on the edge of my couch, letter still in my hand, staring out through the half-drawn curtains of my living room. The street was quiet. Still. Too still. My instincts kicked in, the same ones I'd sharpened over decades of watching people lie with a smile. Someone was out there. I pulled my phone out and dialed a number I never thought I'd use again. Yeah, came a voice on the other end. Gruff, tired, familiar. Paul, I said. It's Mark. A pause. You said you were done. He finally answered. I was, but it's not done with me. I told Paul about the letter, about Jason, about the feeling I couldn't shake that someone was still watching, waiting, circling like a vulture. Paul had been a private investigator before he retired. We'd worked together on corporate fraud cases when I was still in the game. He owed me a favor. Or maybe he just wanted something to do again. I'll stop by tonight, he said. Don't open the door unless I say the word, Sidar. Got it? I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Cedar, got it. After I hung up, I went back into my home office, the same room I used to build my consultancy from scratch, before it was ripped out from under me. I sat down, opened my laptop, and began digging again. Not just into Jason, I'd already uncovered everything I could about him, but into the shadow network he used. The shell companies, the lawyer who vanished, the name Julian Vex, the man I once dismissed as a ghost. But I was wrong. Julian Vex was real, and he was the one pulling the strings from the shadows. I found his name on a set of internal memos buried deep in old encrypted emails Jason had forwarded to himself years ago. I only had them because of a corrupt hard drive Jason left behind when his secretary accidentally sent it to me instead of a tech recovery company. One lucky break in a hurricane of betrayal. Julian Vex was the kind of man who didn't exist in databases. No photos, no paper trail, no registered property. Just whispers. Contracts paid in cash. Hushed settlements. And when someone crossed him, they didn't get a second chance. That letter, that wasn't Jason. That was Vex. Paul showed up around 8:45 p.m., as promised. He said the word cedar and stepped inside like he'd never left the field. Same sharp eyes, same leather jacket. You've got cameras? He asked. Only one by the front, nothing inside. He rolled his eyes. That's your first problem. He took out a small box, opened it, and began setting up two pin-sized cameras, one in the kitchen, one in the hallway leading to my office. Motion triggered. No Wi-Fi. Hardwired backup. I've been following Jason's trial, he said, but I heard something weird. What? The judge sealed part of the case. Gag order, witness names, transcript redactions. That doesn't happen in fraud trials unless someone dangerous is involved. Julian Vex. Paul stopped adjusting the lens and looked up. You know that name? I do now. He sat back on the couch, crossed his arms. Then you need to get ahead of this. Because if he sent that letter, you've got less time than you think. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of shattering glass or a knock at the door. Neither came. But something worse did. The next morning, I got an email. No subject line, no text, just a video attachment. I opened it. The frame was dark at first, then lit up with a flicker. A gas station. Two men faces blurred, standing by my car. One of them knelt down, slashed my back tire. The other planted something underneath. A tracker. It ended with a shot of them walking away. One of them pausing to look directly into the camera, a blurred face but unmistakable posture. Confident. Taunting. The timestamp? 2 nights ago. Someone had been following me since before the letter. Paul watched the video and nodded grimly. They're not trying to hurt you yet. They're trying to spook you. Well, it's working. That afternoon, we went to a contact of Paul's, an ex-cybercrime specialist who now worked out of the back of a dry cleaning shop. She confirmed the tracker was still active transmitting data. She disabled it and traced its signal route to a private server in the Caymans. Vex again. The ghost. The puppeteer. We were dealing with something bigger than revenge. This was a cleanup job, and I was the last loose end. Paul leaned against the wall, arms crossed. They're not just watching you. They're planning something. Big. Probably timed with Jason's sentencing. I rubbed my temples. That's in 6 weeks. Then we've got 6 weeks to burn it all down. The plan came together slowly, carefully. I used everything I'd learned about Jason's old operation, how they cleaned dirty money, how they laundered stolen funds through medical charities, and how Vex covered the trail. I still had encrypted files, old passwords Jason stupidly never changed, and contacts who owed me silence. Over the next week, I compiled a digital dossier on the entire operation. Every lie, every shell account, every forged signature, including a very specific offshore fund tied directly to Vex and a set of contracts that could prove coercion, blackmail, and at least 2 homicides, both disguised as accidents. But I needed one more thing: leverage, something that would make Vex hesitate. That's when I got another letter. This time, it wasn't typed, it was handwritten. And it was from her. Emily, my ex-wife, Jason's lover, the woman who testified against me, who claimed I was abusive, controlling, paranoid. But now, I know what I did. I know I can't undo it. But you need to know the truth. It was never just Jason. It was him, Julian Vex. He made me choose. She'd enclosed a flash drive, password protected. Inside were voice recordings, conversations between Jason and Vex, plans, bribes. One recording where Jason admits in his own voice that he set me up to take the fall for a $3.2 million embezzlement scheme. It was gold. It was my salvation. And more importantly, it was my weapon. Paul listened to it all and leaned back, grinning. You don't need to wait for sentencing. We release this, and you're not just free. You're the match that lights the fuse. But I hesitated. Not yet. Not until I saw Vex's face. Not until I knew what Emily meant by, he made me choose. Because something told me I wasn't the only one being watched. I wasn't the only one with a target on my back. And the real game hadn't even started yet. To be continued. I sat alone in the dark, the glow of my laptop illuminating the room. Emily's voice still echoed in my ears, playing back over and over from the recordings on the flash drive. Every word was proof not just of Jason's betrayal, but of the deeper rot underneath. Julian Vex hadn't just manipulated Jason. He'd manipulated everyone, including her. But what struck me most wasn't the content, it was her voice. She sounded broken, guilt-stricken, and scared. Not the Emily I remembered, sharp, poised, calculated. This was someone who'd seen something she couldn't unsee, someone trying to claw her way out of a cage. I replayed her note in my head. He made me choose. What did that mean? What choice? And why send it now? Paul came back the next morning with bad news. We've been compromised, he said, tossing his phone on the counter. I tried accessing one of the backup servers we used in your dossier. It's been wiped. Wiped how? Professionally. Like government level clean. Someone's watching the same files we are. That only left one question. Why hadn't they come for me yet? They want something, Paul said, echoing my thoughts. Or someone. I opened my laptop and scanned through the metadata on Emily's audio files again. Most were recorded through a common app, easy to fake timestamps. But one file stood out. It had a geolocation tag buried in the XCF data. Baltimore. I hadn't known she was even still in the country. Without a word, I packed a bag, checked my car twice for bugs, and drove. Paul didn't like the idea of splitting up, but I needed this to be quiet, personal. If Emily was in danger, I owed her that much. 7 hours later, I pulled into a motel off I-95, 3 blocks from the coordinates embedded in the file. I checked in under a fake name and waited until nightfall. The neighborhood wasn't rough, but it had the kind of silence that meant no one would notice if something went wrong. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor. I didn't knock. I just stood in the hall, staring at the door, wondering what I'd say after everything that happened. But I didn't have to. The door opened before I lifted my hand. Emily stood there, barefoot, pale, her eyes swollen from lack of sleep. No makeup, no pretense, just real. Hi, she said. Just that. We sat at her small kitchen table, mugs of cold coffee between us. Neither of us touched them. She spoke first. I didn't know what he was until it was too late. Jason? I asked. She shook her head. Vex? She told me everything. How Jason had introduced them under the pretense of a business mentor. How Vex offered her a way out when our marriage started crumbling. How he promised to take care of her if she helped Jason destroy me. I thought I was protecting myself, she whispered, but he was never helping me. He was using me as leverage. For what? Her eyes met mine, wet, terrified. For you. I froze. What do you mean? She leaned forward, voice low, like the walls might hear her. You weren't the target, Mark. Not at first. Vex wanted something else. Something you had. Access to investors, old corporate networks. He thought you had intel that could be worth millions. She swallowed. But when you wouldn't play, Jason offered another option. Take you out of the picture and take your place. So I was expendable, I said. No, she said, her voice cracking. You were necessary. You were the key to everything. They couldn't touch your assets directly, so they dismantled your reputation, piece by piece, until you had nothing left to fight with. I stared at her. And for the first time, I didn't see a traitor. I saw a survivor. Someone who'd been groomed and caught in the same trap as I had. There was one more thing. She gave me an envelope. Inside were photos, contracts, a ledger, and a list of names. Board members, politicians, CEOs, all of them connected, all of them dirty, all of them tied to Vex's private fund, the same one Jason funneled money through during our time at the firm. It was more than I could process. You kept all this? I was going to run, she said. But then I heard Jason was arrested. I thought it was over. I shook my head. No, Jason was just the face. That night, I sent the contents of the envelope to Paul, along with a voice note. We have them. Every name, every link. It's bigger than we thought, and they're going to come after her next. Paul responded a few minutes later. Good, let them come. We're ready. But we weren't. Not really. Because just before dawn, someone broke into Emily's apartment. They didn't knock. They kicked the door in with military precision. I grabbed her and we ran out the fire escape, across the adjacent rooftop. 2 men chased us, armed, silent, professional. But I knew rooftops. I knew how to vanish. And I'd been waiting for a fight. We lost them in a construction site 2 blocks away. I used a trick I learned years ago in an old maintenance shaft under the foundation. We crawled through damp, echoing concrete until we emerged 2 blocks down. By the time we reached my car, I was already making new plans. Where do we go? She asked, shaking. I looked out at the empty horizon. We don't run anymore, I said. We turn around and end this. Emily looked at me like I was crazy. But I'd never been more clear. We weren't just exposing Jason or even Vex. We were blowing the whole system open. Every man who'd paid for silence. Every woman who'd been forced into it. Every deal done in secret. And I knew exactly where to start. I didn't sleep for the next 36 hours. Neither did Emily. We holed up in a safe house Paul had arranged outside of Richmond, a run-down lake cabin, hidden behind a thicket of dying pine trees and a rusted gate no one would look at twice. It smelled like dust and gasoline, but it had a landline, no Wi-Fi, and a wood stove that crackled just loud enough to remind me I was alive. Emily barely spoke. When she did, it was in whispers, about how Vex recruited her, how he made her believe she had control, while quietly pulling the strings behind every move she thought was hers. He never screamed, she told me once, curled under an old quilt. Never raised his voice. He didn't have to. Just made you feel like he already knew what you'd do, like the only smart thing left was to agree. I understood that kind of evil, the kind that didn't need fists, just silence, patience, and power. Paul drove in the next morning. He looked tired, but his eyes were alive with something else adrenaline. He threw a thick folder on the kitchen table. We're going live. What do you mean? He opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots, flight logs, correspondence records, and a photo. I leaned forward. The man in the photo was smiling. Clean-cut, expensive suit, slick-back hair. Julian Vex. Where is he? I asked. Paul tapped the corner of the image. Florida, private estate outside of Naples. He's hosting a donor retreat. Politicians, execs, hedge fund guys. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars behind that gate. And how do you know? Paul gave a small smile. Because I sold him the surveillance system 6 years ago. Emily blinked. You what? Paul shrugged. Different lifetime. I've worked both sides. That's why you called me, remember? We laid out a plan in the dust-covered cabin kitchen, using beer bottles as guards and forks as sentries. Vex had layers of security, cameras, private guards, off-duty law enforcement. But Paul had blueprints. He knew the blind spots, the patterns. We had one shot. During the retreat, Vex would be hosting a closed-door panel in a separate wing of the estate, one with limited access, fewer guards, and a secure room that controlled all local surveillance. If we can get to that room, Paul said, we can download everything. Financial records, guest lists, audio logs, emails. He keeps it all there. Physical backup off-grid. He thinks it's safer. I looked at Emily. She didn't hesitate. When do we leave? 2 days later, we were standing at the edge of a mangrove forest, looking through binoculars at a compound that looked more like a private embassy than a home. Spotlights panned over the outer gates. A fountain gurgled peacefully in the courtyard, masking the movements of 2 armed guards pacing in mirrored patterns. The irony wasn't lost on me. Julian Vex had built his kingdom on silence. And we were going to tear it down with noise. Paul had everything timed. One of his old contacts, a quiet hacker who went by the name of Cave, would trigger a false breach alarm on the south perimeter. It wouldn't cause chaos, not immediately, but it would draw 2 of the 4 main guards out of the control wing. That would give us 12 minutes. 12 minutes to cross the grounds, breach the service hallway, bypass the biometric lock, and get what we came for. 12 minutes to risk everything. We moved just after midnight. I wore black from head to toe. Emily, too. Paul stayed behind, monitoring from a van half a mile away. Static crackled in my earpiece. Southgate triggered, you're green, clock's ticking. We sprinted low along the tree line. Every breath was fire, every sound too loud. I kept my focus on the control wing. It looked ordinary from the outside, just another stucco addition with tall windows and tasteful lighting. But I knew what was inside. Secrets. Truths people had killed to keep. We reached the side door. Paul's schematics said it was a secondary entrance, only used by cleaning staff. Emily had memorized the override code, a 6-digit passphrase Vex had used across multiple properties. She keyed it in. The lock clicked. We slipped inside. The hallway was silent, tiled, empty. A security camera rotated left, then right. I moved on the beat of its motion, then reached up and clipped a blackout filter over the lens. 10 minutes left. We reached the main vault door, a thick, reinforced panel with a biometric scanner and manual keypad. Paul's voice buzzed in my ear. Scanner still reads active. You'll need a print. Emily pulled a small plastic sleeve from her pocket. Inside was a thin gelatin replica of a fingerprint. Vex's, recovered from a glass he'd used at a fundraiser 3 months ago. She pressed it to the scanner. A green light blinked. The door hissed open. We stepped into a climate-controlled chamber, cold and quiet, lined with servers and steel cabinets. A single terminal sat in the center. This was it, the archive. Every thread of corruption, every dollar laundered, every silence bought. It was all here. Emily sat at the terminal. She typed fast, fingers blurring. I found the master index. It's all tagged. Names, amounts, locations. Paul's voice. 6 minutes. Rapid fast. We downloaded as much as we could, at least 400 GB, and burned 3 emergency flash drives. Then something strange happened. Emily stopped typing. Her eyes narrowed at the screen. What is it? I asked. She turned the monitor toward me. It showed me, my name, my company, my former clients. A folder marked Insurance File, Mark Whitmore. Inside were call transcripts, emails, even old therapy notes. Things I thought had been private, buried, or long deleted. Vex had someone in your life for a long time, Emily whispered. Not just watching me, recording me, weaponizing every weakness, every doubt, every broken piece of me I'd worked to hide. He'd planned my fall for years, and I hadn't even seen it coming. 3 minutes, Paul snapped. We backed out fast. But as we reached the hallway, I heard it. Footsteps. Too many. Paul's voice turned urgent. Abort! Guards heading your way. Front and rear. Go dark now. We sprinted for the exit. But the hallway was already compromised. A guard stepped out from the corner, gun raised. I tackled him before he could speak, slamming his head into the wall. Emily grabbed his badge and we kept moving. The alarm blared behind us. Too late. We were already outside, running across wet grass, gunshots cracking behind us like fireworks. A bullet grazed my arm. I didn't stop. We dove into the mangroves just as the van peeled up to the service road. Paul yanked the door open. Go, go, go! We slammed it shut behind us as he hit the gas. Silence. My ears rang. My chest burned. But we were alive. And we had the evidence. All of it. Emily slumped beside me, eyes wide with disbelief. We did it, she whispered. But I shook my head. Not yet. Back at the safe house, Paul uploaded everything to secure servers and prepared a timed release to a network of journalists, whistleblowers, and international agencies. In 48 hours, Vex's empire would crumble. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted him to know it. I sent a message directly to his private number. A single line. You built your kingdom on secrets. We just made them public. No threats, no insults, just truth. A few hours later, Paul got a call from one of his old contacts, a private investigator, who worked international white-collar cases. Vex is on the move, the voice said. Private jet left Florida. No flight plan filed. Destination unknown. He was running. But this time, it wouldn't matter. Because the story had already been handed off to dozens of sources. Redundancy, protection, proof. They couldn't silence us now. Not again. Emily stood with me that night on the porch of the cabin, staring out at the lake. The sky was streaked with fire and clouds. I don't know what comes next, she said. Neither do I replied. But for the first time, I'm not afraid of it. She turned to me, tears in her eyes. Do you hate me? I thought about it. And then I said the truth. No, but I hated who we let ourselves become. We stood there a long time just breathing, listening to the water. And somewhere in the distance, I imagined Vex doing the same, pacing, panicking, watching everything he'd built start to collapse. But we weren't done. Not yet. We had one last move to make. One more truth to reveal. One more mask to tear off. Silence. That was the first sign something had shifted. No calls, no texts, no emails, no threats. Just a hollow, unnatural calm. The kind that usually comes before the storm. But this time, I was the one holding the thunder. After everything they'd done, my wife's betrayal, Thomas's manipulation, the embezzlement, the gaslighting, the attempted erasure of my name and legacy, it was time to end this. But not with rage. With control. With precision. With justice. A week earlier, I'd handed over every piece of evidence I had to a trusted investigative journalist. Someone who had once written scathing pieces about corporate corruption and dirty divorces. I knew her reputation. She didn't just write stories. She exposed empires. She was ruthless, and this time, she had a new mission. Mine. The article dropped like a bomb at 8 a.m. on a Monday morning. The headline read, Sleeping with the Enemy, the secret affairs, lies, and corporate theft that brought down a power couple. Photos, documents, audio recordings, Even video snippets from the hidden camera I had installed in my home months earlier, the one that had caught Thomas and Julia together in my study, whispering about how to dismantle me piece by piece. By noon, the phones at Thomas's firm wouldn't stop ringing. By 3 p.m., Julia's face was splashed across every gossip site and business page, the mistress of deception. By 6 p.m., an arrest warrant was issued for Thomas. Financial fraud, misappropriation of investor funds, wire fraud, securities violations. The list went on. And Julia, the public sympathy she had weaponized for months, evaporated instantly. Even her own family turned against her when the truth came out. But I didn't watch the downfall from afar. No, I walked right into it. I visited the office one last time. Mine, the one they stole. There was chaos. Police officers walking in and out. Employees packing their desks, gossip buzzing like a broken neon light. But then I saw her. Julia. Standing there in the hallway, trembling, holding her phone with both hands, eyes puffy, makeup smeared. When she saw me, she froze. Mark, her voice cracked. I stopped just a few feet away from her. You always thought you were smarter than me, that I'd roll over, that I'd break. Tears pooled in her eyes. I didn't think it would go this far. No, I said coldly. You thought I wouldn't fight back. She stepped toward me. I didn't love him. You didn't love me either, I said. You loved what I could give you, until he promised more. I left her standing there, broken, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making. Thomas was arrested that night at a private club. Tried to run, tried to lie, none of it worked. They froze his assets. Julia's too. The media frenzy didn't die down for weeks. More victims came forward. Investors who had been misled, employees who had been threatened. The narrative shifted fast. I wasn't the villain. I was the one they tried to bury. But I didn't just survive. I rose. 6 months later, I was back in a smaller office, not as flashy, not as high-rise, but mine. My name on the glass. My team loyal, my values unshaken. People asked if I forgave her, if I visited Thomas in jail, if I'd ever love again. Forgiveness? No, not for them. But I forgave myself for trusting too deeply, for not seeing it sooner. And love? I wasn't looking for it. But I knew one thing. The next time I opened my heart, it would be to someone who could weather the storm with me, not create it behind my back. Epilogue. The last I heard, Julia had moved to another state, living under a different name. Thomas, still behind bars, appealing his sentence. Me? I was watching the sunset from my office window, alone but at peace. Some scars stay forever, but so does strength. And they never saw that part coming.